Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. If you haven't been here before, this is predominantly a turning channel. Each and every week I show people how to make things on the lathe. This week we're going to be working with some more cherry. It's got a little bit of dry rot in it. This isn't so good either. And of course it's got some bad sections in it too that we're going to need to cut out. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut these sections out. And I'm going to inlay some of this aluminum honeycomb. So this, I've never worked with this stuff before, so I'm really interested and slightly terrified to work with it and see how we make out. But anyway, this was sent to us by Glenn, so thanks Glenn for that. We'll, I think, yeah, I'll just cut out a bunch of areas and we'll inlay this, and I don't know, we'll see how it looks. Maybe a shallow bowl, maybe a platter. All right, first thing we have to do though is size the piece of wood for the bucket. So let's do that, and then well, we'll figure out what we're going to do from there. So this is the bucket that we're going to use, and this is just a 5-gallon bucket that I've cut off near the top and then put a wood bottom in. That way you'll get the largest casting that you can get from a 5-gallon bucket. And of course the template for that. I am a little torn as to how to cut this, because I know that these gnarly areas look really cool when they're cast. We're using our cast, and our cast doesn't have a really super long open time. This here is dry rot that's all over the top of this. So, you know, I don't think it goes real deep. So I'm hoping that if we do use the air cast that it will get some decent penetration. But you know, the gnarly areas sometimes are the best areas when it comes to casting wooden pieces in epoxy. So I don't know, I might leave that and then cut out good sections of this. But anyway, let's use our template here and try and figure out what we should do here. Yeah, the worst amount of dry rot is here, but I do like the fact that it's open up. So you know what? I'm going to leave that, and then we'll cut out good sections of wood. Let's go to the bandsaw. So I can honestly say that, you know, when I first started my YouTube channel here, that I never would have thought that I'd be cutting out good areas and leaving bad areas behind. My how things have changed. Yeah, funny, I was changing my blade. Want to make sure that it's good and sharp to cut the stuff with. And I was worried about cutting my hands on this, but I cut myself when I was changing the blade. Oh, yeah. Yep. That's pretty much the story of my life right there. So I'm debating on cutting off just a big section of this. I don't know. Is that going to look too odd? Probably. Something like that, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to be, I mean, this is going to make it really hard to cut these pieces, but like that one there, this was a spare piece that he sent. That might be all right in there like that. Yeah, that piece will fit in there. All right, let's go to the bandsaw, cut these out, and then we'll figure out how we're going to cut these without slicing ourselves. So it's that whole randomness thing, again, that I kind of struggle with. Maybe if I was to do this again, I would probably make those maybe not so strong points. In the end, I really like the way that this looks, so I guess it's it's just a personal preference where and what you want to cut out. But you know, as a general rule, cutting out the bad areas is probably not a bad idea either. Just showing how I clean out those little areas with the blade. Now, of course, I want to burn this piece, and one of the reasons for burning that is essentially you don't have to sand any of these pieces that I'm cutting out, because the torch, if you leave it on there long enough, will actually mask all of that, and you don't have to really fool around with sanding it. Although sanding it certainly may not be a bad idea here. It will definitely give the resin a good tooth to bond to, but you know, all this charred wood here, I don't have a problem with this either. This will make a good solid bond with it as well. It's funny from here, it kind of looks like an electric guitar body now that I look at it. But anyway, I did this a little while back, maybe 3-4 videos back, and it was well received, so I figured that I would try to get on this piece combined with that aluminum honeycomb, and I'm sure that that's not the technical name for it. I'm sure there's a name for it, and I'll look it up here before the end of this video. But anyway, I really like these burnt pieces, and it's just one way to maybe cut corners so you don't have to sand as much when you make stuff. So I'm just going to put on some heavy leather gloves here and just, you know, kind of rub down all these areas just to make sure that we don't have any more embers burning, because we certainly don't want that as we bring it into the workshop. That's for sure. So we're going to try and cut this with my knife here. It did work on one that I tried, so we'll see if we can do it with this one. Yeah, I don't know how they typically cut this stuff, but they actually work pretty good. So, you know, I probably could have YouTubed this. I'm sure there's a YouTube video on here for cutting this stuff, but anyway, this seemed to work fine. Something like that. So now when it comes to cutting these larger areas, well, that's a different story, especially since, you know, we've got some curves here that we have to do. And I wasn't exactly sure how the bandsaw would react to this, so that's why initially when I first started, I didn't use the bandsaw. But after cutting this first piece, you'll see that I'll end up switching to the bandsaw. I will say that it's very hard to see what's going on. Maybe whiteout might be a better solution for that, so you can mark it. Don't have any though. I do highly recommend wearing gloves doing this. From your vantage point, you can clearly see that it's marked there, but from the operator side, where I'm standing, it's very hard to see. You can hold it up and tilt it and look across it, and then you can see it better. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe even scoring it with the knife when it was, you know, when I was marking it out. Maybe that would be a better way to do this. You know, and again, if I could redo this, I would maybe ensure that things would fit a lot tighter than they did. But you know, it's not easy to cut on the bench like this. That is for sure. But anyway, yeah, whiteout, scoring it with the knife. If you have any other ideas, I certainly would like to hear them in the comments as to the easiest way to mark this out. Whew, boys, I tell you, it is not an easy thing to cut. And I'm sure there's some people watching us going, I cut this all the time and don't have any problems. One of the biggest concerns that I had with this, especially pieces around the outside like this is, was how well the epoxy was going to adhere to the aluminum. And in a perfect world, you know, this comb would be larger in diameter, and then you'd be able to actually get in there and sand it, and then, you know, in theory, there shouldn't be any adhesion issues then. I'm very tempted to take this to the bandsaw and try and cut it. Very tempted. I don't know. Maybe I'll try and cut a little sliver off here and see if that works or not. So this is way easier to do. I'm just going to throw that out there. And in the future, if I ever need to cut this stuff again, this is certainly the way that I'm going to do it. I will say that this isn't 100% aluminum. It looks like there is paper, and then somehow there's aluminum stuck to the paper. And yeah, that was so much easier to cut out than the other way that I was doing it with the knife. So we're going to glue the blank in place. That way it doesn't float. And after I get all these pieces stuffed in there, you know, again, the only thing that you really need to be careful, and it's really hard to do when you're cutting it with a knife, is to just keep all of your points on there. In the end, you'll get a better look, I think. There. That should be pretty cool, actually. Let's mix up some epoxy. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using Recasting this week, mainly because I'm stretched for time. Between filming over at the workshop and doing a lot of other things behind the scenes here, I needed something that was quick, and I'm going for color separation this week as well, so that was another reason to use Recasting. Don't forget to scrape the sidewalls of your buckets and, of course, the bottom of your buckets. I'm going to pour off a little bit of this because we're going to, like I said, we're going to put another color in. For the main color is going to be crystal purple. Everybody loves crystal purple. I haven't met a person yet that hasn't liked crystal purple. And we're going to throw some crystal ice white in this. This is the chunky stuff too, which is, you know, I used last week for the bowl set. That, by the way, was very popular. Thank you to those that have watched it. And if you missed that, I will link it at the end of this video. Very cool bowl set. And for my little accent color, we're going to use the Hypershift. Gold, green, green, orange, red. Really do like these Hypershifts. And that's a lot of Hypershift in a small little container. Probably too much. So this is about 1.6 liters. Hoping that it's going to be enough. But we'll have to see here because I'm not sure. Well, I've got about, what is this? About 6 ounces. And that's not going to be enough. So I'm going to have to mix up a little more. And I'll be right back. Here's another liter. That should be more than enough. We are going to throw this in the vacuum chamber. And I will add the Hypershift after we're done with the vacuum chamber. So that's coming up next. I will say that I will be very surprised if this doesn't thermal crack. There is a lot of epoxy in this. This is well over the pour, the recommended depth of pour. Lots and lots of air in this. Of course, a lot of that was introduced during mixing, so that's another reason to use the vacuum chamber. Anyway, as you're watching this, I'll just give you a little shop update because I know that a lot of people are wondering when the next video is going to be out. I hope to have that out maybe this weekend or very early next week. So have a look for that. Basically, there hasn't really been a whole lot done since I talked to you last. The HVAC guy is there, but he's missed about 3 or 4 days. I don't know if they're working on a different job. So essentially the ductwork is all the way around the perimeter, but they still need to cut in the vents and do some other things too. So hopefully that happens soon because I still have a lot of other things to do in the workshop as well before I can move in. That's been 20 minutes, so I'm going to release the vacuum, burn these bubbles off, and we'll add our second color. I don't know, the bubbles just keep coming. Now, the one thing that I got to do here is find out where the honeycomb is, because I can't see it anymore. All right, so there, in this area, yeah, stuff's starting to warm up already. So I'm just gonna drop this in with the hope that it's gonna go down into that honeycomb and stay in there. So there. So you can use an Allen key for more than one purpose. All right, that's it. I gotta quickly get this into the pressure pot. See you guys in there tomorrow. Good. Well, I guess it's afternoon. I would say that we've got good color separation, but we have our first thermal crack right here. Haven't had one of them in quite some time, and that's just due to the fact that this is such a gross overpour to the tune of probably 2 inches. But we'll see that as if that's all there is. I mean, that's going to be very easy to fix. But let's get this out and have a look and see if there's any more. I don't see any more on the surface, but I am liking that color. All right, we'll try the compressed air again. Nope. I knew we wouldn't get lucky. Was it 3 times in a row? There it is. With half of my tuck tape with it. That's what was holding it. I don't see any other thermal cracking. Where is that crack at? Here. Yeah, so that's going to go down inside of that honeycomb, so we it doesn't go all the way through. Might get lucky. Let's get some centers. I'd say that's pretty good. I'm really curious to see how this aluminum is going to cut. Yeah, well, let's find out. Starting off with the number 3 Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems. And you know, this has a carbide cutter on it. So, you know, carbide will cut aluminum very, very easily. So it wasn't really so much, I wasn't concerned about it cutting the aluminum because I knew it would do that. I was concerned about it pulling the epoxy off of the aluminum when it was exposed on the end like it is here. So that was probably the biggest fear that I had going into this. And along with that, like I said earlier, if you were able to sand down in between those honeycombs, then, you know, that would give that epoxy a good tooth to bite to, and then, you know, there'd be no issues at all. But, you know, it does cut cleanly, surprisingly enough. I definitely want to explore this a little more than I have this week. You know, especially if you can get some taller stuff, you could actually put it into a deep bowl blank. I think that'd be really cool. You could maybe layer it but then you're going to have that line on the outside. So it's just one of those things that, anyway, it's a very neat thing to work with. And I don't know if you can get brass, if you can get copper, that would be even cooler. So tons of, things are flowing in my mind right now in regards to this kind of stuff. So once I get more of it, then I'll see what kind of ideas I can come up with. But it's, again, it was actually a scary medium to initially work with, and then once I got it on the lathe, I'm like, yeah, this is no different than cutting wood. Maybe when you're into the aluminum heavy sections, you might want to slow your cuts down, your feed rate down a bit. But other than that, it cut very cleanly, especially with the carbide tools. One other thing about the new workshop that I'll mention is my brother-in-law Mike and I yesterday put down a floor sealer. We really didn't have any choice. Just cleaning up in there and scraping the floor and sweeping the floor, the broom was digging into it. And so I'm like, yeah, there's no way that I can work in here. After they ground the floor, it's still pretty rough in some areas. And that's what it looks like, but you're going to see here that we've got some thermal cracking issues in virtually all of those little areas. So I'm like, okay, we're going to have to recast this, but what I want to do is basically unearth the whole thing. That way the epoxy will get at it from the top and from the bottom when we recast this. But I believe the main issue, and this honeycomb didn't act like a heat sink. It actually trapped that epoxy in those little voids, and it wasn't able to free flow around and cool itself. In the end, I believe this blank was 2.5 inches thick, and of course our cast is only meant to be used for around 1 inch. So that's why this thermal cracked. And I mean, it's twice its depth of pour that it's supposed to be at. So that's not on our cast. That's on me for sure. People like these zoomed out views. So yeah, I mean, being covered in epoxy shavings is pretty standard. The other thing too that I was worried about, and it was really a non-issue because it's so paper thin, is maybe getting some aluminum embedded in my skin. To be honest with you, I've never even seen any of it. I did wear gloves pretty much the whole time, except for right down near the end maybe, just to be sure that I wasn't going to get any metal in my hand. So there's the other thing about the new workshop. So right now I can't move in because the ductwork isn't done yet. The furnace itself doesn't need to be hooked up and running for me to move in there. But I really don't want anybody in there after I've moved in and I'm shooting video in there. So because that may affect kind of video production. So that's one thing. The other thing that we have to do is I have to hang air lines that are going to go all the way around the shop, and one's even going to go up on the ceiling. And same with dust collector lines. That has to happen as well. So I've ordered all of those supplies, and that is, hopefully I'll have them tomorrow, and I'll be able to start to work on that. In reality, probably 2 weeks before I move in. Now what I want to do here is just, as you can see, I put a tenon on top of this, and I just want to clean off the bottom of this because now, of course, we're going to have to recast this. So I didn't want this big space sitting on the bottom of the bucket, so that's why I decided to mount it in the chuck and clean off the bottom here. We're just going to use less epoxy when casting. Since we're holding this by the tenon, I'm able to pull the tailstock away so that we can size this so it fits perfectly in the bucket. So you'll see me do this, a few times till I get the exact fit that I'm looking for. Again, I don't like wasting epoxy, but sometimes, it's a necessary evil, but in this instance, I can actually shape this to the correct profile, even to the bucket, and then we can make a nice fitting casting in order to get this done again. But anyway, it's a little frustrating, but you know, going into it, in the back of my mind, I knew I was going to be having some issues. So, you know, as far as time saving is concerned, I'm no further ahead. If I had to use deep cast, it would have been just fine. I'm feeling that you guys are having a hard time seeing this. So hopefully you can see it there now. It is literally almost every one of them. Really, really torn about the color. I don't know if I should just stick with purple or do I go back with the Hypershift. I think I'm going to do the Hypershift. It's what makes it look good, hopefully, is that almost every one of them will have that in there, as opposed to just a few, you know. I mean, I do like this color combination that you see right here, and you know, I'm hoping that's what I was hoping for deep down inside of here. And there are some of them where you can see, it's funny, they look like little dots, actually, the way it, I don't know if you guys are going to see that or not. Anyway, I'm just going to mix up some art cast, and while I'm doing that, I'll think about it some more. But I just had to turn this down a little bit smaller so that it'll fit in here nicely. I'll be right back. I'm going to go with the Hypershift. This is 24 ounces, and that is 650 milliliters. And I know that may seem like a lot, and maybe it is. I won't put it all in here, but we've got to fill in some of the bottom of the bucket too. But we are definitely going to throw this in the vacuum chamber to make sure that all of those voids get filled. So, vacuum chamber coming up next. All right, let's see how we do here. More satisfying vacuum chamber footage. I know a lot of people really like this. You'll see me, I threw Dwayne on here because I thought that casting was, yeah, what it was, there was some air trapped underneath of it. So then, of course, I don't know if you've seen it kind of lift up there and almost like it burped itself and then laid down flat, and it doesn't move after that. Don't know what I'd do if I didn't have a vacuum chamber. I think everything that needs to be filled in should be good now. So what I'll do is release the vacuum. I'll burn off the rest of those bubbles. I don't know if there's any need to keep Dwayne on there or not, but anyway, I probably will. But anyway, let's see what it looks like after I release the vacuum. There, that level's going to drop off a little bit. Probably not a whole lot more, though, I wouldn't think. I'm not going to bother with Dwayne. I don't think there's any need for it. That's good and solid on the bottom. All right, I'll throw this in a pressure pot. See you guys in there tomorrow. Fingers crossed, everything's going to be good. Good morning. Well, it's probably afternoon now. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. Almost the perfect level in here. Looks like everything's been filled in. We'll be able to use this still, so that's great. Now let's just get it out. See, everything looks good. This is just baffling to me how you can put this in the vacuum chamber and this, when it's been submerged in the epoxy, doesn't get any epoxy. Someone needs to explain that to me. It is concave a little bit, so maybe there's an air pocket in there, but I just, this is now the second one that I've seen like this. Anyway, regardless, let's throw this on the lathe and get a glue block on. If you remember the Easter egg nightlight that I did recently, that was the same deal. Basically right in the center of that blank at the bottom. And again, it was kind of dished up. Anyway, it had a dry spot as well. So maybe what I need to do is start throwing some epoxy in and then putting the casting in, and hopefully that will sort that out. Because when these do come out, I really want them to be fully penetrated by the epoxy. I don't want any dry areas. It's a non-issue, but it could have been an issue, especially if that's an area that you're trying to fill. So anyway, I just find baffling that, you can have this thing in the vacuum chamber for 45 minutes to an hour in some cases, and then have a dry spot in it. It's just, things that make you go, huh? I did manage to put in just about the perfect amount. There was the tenon was fully exposed, so we didn't have to do anything there. And again, the tenon is just a temporary thing until I can get a glue block on the bottom of this and then move it outboard, because that is the plan, like it usually is. There was some leftover epoxy from the second pour here, and of course that went into my globe molds as I start building stock again for that. That way we can do another space-themed project that seems to be quite popular. So there will be more of that coming in the future, and I really would like to try and do some sort of space nebulas and just some wild and crazy stuff. That's really what I want to do with these space-themed projects. But anyway, I'm glad you guys enjoy them, and certainly thank you so much for watching them. Before I move this outboard, I want to remove as much mass as I can. This blank is actually fairly heavy with this amount of epoxy in it, and it was cherry. Cherry's not a light wood. So I'm going to do my initial shaping, and when I first did that real long curve, I'm like, yeah, this is going to look cool. And again, you can see that all the epoxy is still in place, even though the aluminum pieces are really close to the surface. So I'm really happy about that as well, because as I said earlier, that was probably my biggest risk. Now, the one thing that I never thought to do was to clean this off. This could have had some sort of an oil on it. So maybe that would be something that you want to look into before you do this. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, if you can sand in there, that'll definitely, give you a little more peace of mind. But as you can see, I mean, I'm just taking slower cuts, and it is cutting clean, and for the most part, no different than, say, turning burl, really. Now, is that because I'm using carbide tools? Yes, I would assume so. Can you do this with a gouge? Yes, I'm assuming you can. You'll probably just have to sharpen a lot more than you ordinarily would when it's just straight wood. And now we've got a little profile on the top. Yep, this thing's really growing on me. I'm really liking the look of it. I am going to leave a little bit of a flared rim, if you will, at the very top. But I want it more of a curve on the bottom side, and probably you'll see me do some more shaping up around the rim too. It's very similar to the branches. I like cutting those branches on these long curves, and it gives you a different look. Well, it's the same idea with this honeycomb too. Same principle. Just cleaning up the bottom here and getting it ready for the glue block. I'm going to take some 60 grit here just to rough up the surface. Make sure we have really good adhesion. It's important to blow the dust off. And there is one of my homemade face plates, and that is a piece of ash, is what the waste block is. I usually let the glue set, 10-15 minutes, the hot melt glue that is, and that usually is more than enough time to work on it again. Definitely do not do it before that glue is fully set, or else you definitely could maybe get some movement. It is pretty tough stuff. I've turned some really large bowls with hot melt glue and waste blocks on the bottom of them. So, I've turned works that are, 18 inches in diameter on a glue block without any issues. A fairly heavy casting too. So anyway, yeah, that gives me a chance to sit down, get off of my knees. I have two bad knees, and answer comments. That's usually what I do. Try and catch up on my emails. I know I get a lot of emails, and so it's I find a lot of times there's not enough hours in the day to answer these emails and to try and stay on comments. But you know, we certainly do appreciate the comments. It certainly helps in the algorithm. So please do comment, keep commenting. And of course, I do give bowls away every 5,000 subscribers. So if you make a comment, then you're automatically entered into that draw whenever that's going to be. So, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you are the winner, I will ship it to you at my expense. So that's a little different from the epoxy draw. That's only for continental USA and Canada. And of course, use designer epoxy for that. So I want to drill this out. So I started a little pilot hole there, and I get out two of the Forster bits that I typically use on the inboard side of my lathe, and no way, they would not touch this crotch grain and this cherry, and how it's been. There is a lot of epoxy embedded in this too because there was fine little cracks in it. So anyway, what I did was I had a 1/2 inch spade bit, brand new one, and I just ground the end off of it, and then that way it doesn't go too deep into the casting, and that way, you know, you've got a little starting spot. Decided to try the 5/8 bowl gouge here from David Ellsworth. The vast majority of the center of this is actually wood, so there is some epoxy embedded in it. You can see how there's a crack that's been filled. So, you know, you're not just turning straight wood, but this this crotch grain being as hard as it was, and of course, as soon as I get into the epoxy, you can see where it's kind of chipped out. I do find that the gouge is maybe a little bit more aggressive than the Hercules is, so you may tend to get more of that if you use a gouge, but yes, you certainly can. And I'll also talk about the orientation of this piece. Now, if you remember, on the bottom side, there's a fair bit of that dry rot, and my fear was that if the bottom had been the top, then as I'm especially out near the rim area, you're going to have kind of these ugly blemishes with the rim, and I was really worried about that. And the other thing too is when you look down in the bowl, it's you know, for this there is some of that dry rot does come through there. You can see it there now, but I was really fearful that the other way would have been worse. So then, of course, when you look down on the bowl, then you would see this substandard blemish area or areas, and then of course we'd have this really nice honeycomb with it. So, you know, to me it just didn't work. So that's why I went with this orientation and not vice versa. So again, here I'm taking very, very light cuts. As you can see, there's not really much coming off of the Hercules there when I'm doing this. It's all about having a fine touch and not being aggressive. And it's for someone like me, I consider myself to be an aggressive wood turner. A lot of times I'm in get her done mode, and just I'll get more tear out and chip out than I should have. So that's what we're looking at thickness wise in the base. Again, I measure all the time, especially the new wood turners. I mean, I've been at this for a long time, and I still measure my thickness all the time. You know, that's that whole funnel club thing that nobody wants to be in, even though I've been in it a few times myself. But anyway, we'll soon be able to, we're going to have to do some little touch-ups with some CA glue here. But for the most part, this is the style that I'm going to be going with here. All right, so I thought we were done, but I noticed that there is some spots here that we probably should hit with the CA glue. You know, there's going to be a lot of people that probably don't like this, maybe want this thinner. This piece of cherry isn't exactly the best looking piece of cherry. And let's be honest, the star of the show is this, and not so much the wood this week. Again, a lot of people may not like that, but you know, the more we whittle this away, the less of this look that we're going to get. And you know, I really like the look of this aluminum honeycomb. So anyway, we're going to use some thin Flash Bond CA from Designer Epoxy, and just these couple of areas that are here. Not the best camera work here, but I'm just dumping a whole bunch of it in, waiting for it to soak in, and then once it stopped doing that, I hit it with the accelerator. Anyway, we'll leave that. I'm going to let that sit for probably 5 minutes or so, because there's a fair bit of it in there. Then we'll give it another quick trimming, and then we'll finally move on to sanding. So during this final little trimming, make sure that you're taking really fine cuts and you're not aggressive here, because if you do, well, you're going to have to basically start all over if you get a big bunch of chip out. These are the 3.5-inch dimple discs from sandpaper.ca. Again, there's a link in the description. Get 10% off your next order. And I'm going to sand from 60 to 180 because I plan on doing an epoxy coat on this. There are some areas that are very hard for you to see, but they are definitely there, and this piece will benefit from that epoxy coat. Had to switch the air powered right angle sander because just couldn't get in behind there to sand it properly. All right, we're going to do an epoxy coat on this. This is 3 ounces of the Pro Series from Designer Epoxy. So to apply this, I'm going to be using a silicone barbecue brush, another great suggestion from the comments from a while back. And that, of course, that'll keep the bristles out of your work if that's a problem. Not so much for me because I plan on sanding this off tomorrow. But I just throw it in a container that's got acetone in it, and then it's ready to use the next time I want it. Well, there you have it. I think it's very cool. Again, that cherry is just really not that great piece of wood. It's kind of staining you see up here, but I mean, hey, it's cherry. But yeah, very cool. Do you like the burning around the openings? Just adds another little bit of color. Very dark from kind of rot and punky areas. This turned out better than I thought it would. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. I've hit this 3 times with that, so I'm not going to give it any more. I think we're good. We'll definitely have some dry spots here tomorrow, but anyway, we'll sand it up and get our first coat of Waterlux on. Let me know what you think. I actually really like it. I wish I had more. Anyway, see you tomorrow. Well, good morning. This is what we're looking at today. Yeah, lots of dry spots in it. But overall, for the most part, it's all been sealed up. Backside, yeah. Again, some dry spots. I like showing you guys kind of the condition of this, so that'll give you an idea what to expect the next day. So anyway, we're going to start sanding. I'll probably start sanding at 120. It's pretty heavy in some spots here, and we'll go to 800. And I'm not sure what we're going to do from there. I'll figure that out while I'm sanding it, after I turn the power on. So yeah, back with the 3.5-inch double discs. They do make 2.5-inch double discs as well. I prefer the larger ones. I always have. I don't know why, but I do have the smaller discs in my inventory if I need them for whatever reason. But I prefer the 3.5-inch ones. All right, I've decided to use the tongue oil sealer from Waterlux. No buffing. I don't think there's any need for it when you're using the sealer. So anyway, We're going to put this on and keep wetting it for about 10 minutes and then pull it off. But I'll pull the bowl off and I'll show you what it looks like. For this finish, it really doesn't matter what you apply it with. You can use a paper towel, but when it comes to applying the original, you definitely want to use a lint-free cotton rag. There you have it. Tilt this a little bit more this way. Yeah, I definitely want to work with stuff like this next time too, for sure. And you know, I could have tried to cut out all of these bad areas, but you know, we wouldn't have, I guess maybe some of the areas that I cut out were good. I don't know. A lot of times I like to leave those bad areas in because it just gives more visual interest. Anyway, let me know what you think. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to throw this back on the lathe, give it another 5 minutes or so, and then wipe it off. Make sure that it's all wiped off. And we'll put the first coat of Waterlux gloss on tomorrow. Let me know what you think. So, you know, last week there was a few people that mentioned that they really like this kind of satin look. Now, as you can see right here, if this was going to be used as a finish, you'd have to redo it all again. But, you know, these sealers aren't really meant to be finishes. As far as I know, they're not. These sealers are meant to seal the wood, and then of course you're going to put a top coat finish over top of this that's durable. I don't know that the way this is sitting, well, I can pretty much guarantee you the way this is sitting right now, if this was sold and, you know, in a year or two after this has been cleaned out, because I mean, it's going to get clean, dust and whatever, then I don't know what this is going to look like, and I'm assuming it's not going to look very good. So that's why, in my case, I mean, I like the gloss finishes. If you've been here, you know that. But sealer coats aren't really meant as top coat finishes. To buff this piece, we're going to use some Triple E. That's not actually from the BL buffing system, but the buffs that I'm using are. I actually got that from Princess Auto here in Canada. And you're going to see how the aluminum has embedded itself onto the wheel. So, you know, that sealer seals the wood, but it didn't seal any of that metal, of course, because we wiped it all off. So, you know, if that's the look you're going for, you really need to put just a satin finish on something, and you're going to have a better result. You can see the second time I clean it with the rag here that it goes away. All right, we're going to be going with Water Gloss Original Gloss. Since this environment is so dusty here, before I put any finish on, always the very last thing I do before I put the finish on, and I know that I don't show it every time, is blow it off with the air hose. Hopefully that will get rid of any dust that's sitting on the surface. And there it is, the original. Slide a little bit. Very, very cool honeycomb material. Different colors because it's thinner in some areas is very cool. Wood's got a ton of character as well. Yeah, man. Might have to add another one to my collection here. Adding pieces to your collection doesn't pay for machinery for your new workshop. Anyway, if there is a second coat, I'm just going to buff it and add it the way that I did here today. Other than that, we'll see when we're doing the bottom. Let me know what you think. So after one coat of the original gloss, we're going to part this from the waste block and put it on the vacuum chuck like I usually do to finish the bottoms. So one thing that really kind of stands out in this piece is you don't really see any of that hypershift after the recasting. And, you know, it's just, anytime you're filling in a small little crack like that, the color's usually not going to come through. So, you know, using the purple probably would have been just fine there too, because you hardly even pick up any of that. I was really hoping for another pop of color, but I didn't really get it. All right, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Special shout out to the members. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for your support. Let's have a last little chat about this beautiful bowl. Well, what do you think? Almost kind of looks like a skin, snake skin maybe almost. And this is only one coat of the sealer and one coat of the original Waterlux Gloss Original. There's the bottom. Managed to get it on there. For the most part, in the resin's in the dark area, but for the most part, it's all there and easy to read. Now, I already know that I'm going to be getting some ashtray comments about this. Kind of got that profile from the 70s and 80s, if you remember, if you're around then. So I fully expect to hear those. But it'd be a pretty nice ashtray, I'll tell you that right now. Size on this. So at its widest dimension, it's 9 1/4, 2 inches tall, and the rim here is 1 1/8 in thickness. It's a little thinner down at the bottom here. But anyway, I think this is a really cool item, and it is for sale. If you're interested, send me an email to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will disclose the price then in case it is a gift. People keep asking me in the comments to disclose the price. I will not do that in case this is a gift. And I really hope that you guys can appreciate that. I mean, if I was getting something from somebody, I wouldn't want to know what they paid for it either. So that's why I don't disclose the price here. Anyway, let me know if you're interested. Don't forget to put design epoxy in the comments down below, like I was saying earlier, for the giveaway. And yeah, so this was a really fun project to do. And like I said in the video, you know, like if you can get it taller, like I've never worked with this stuff, but you know, if you can get stuff that's this tall, it'd be really cool in a casting. But anyway, I'll look for that online. If you've worked with this stuff like that before, please let me know where a good source of it would be that I could find to get some more. All right, next week is going to be, well, I don't want to spoil it. I think that it's a cool looking project. It is a bowl, I'll tell you that. But it's something that I've been holding on to for a while, not really sure what to do with. And it's going to be one of these bowls that you really love or you really hate. So that's going to be next week. So please come on back for that. All right, I'm out of here. Have yourselves a fantastic weekend. And hopefully we'll see you back here next week for a really cool project. Take care.